Block 1. Block 1. The discovery of the betrayal. The room was shrouded in a thick, palpable silence. The weight of expectation hung heavy in the air, a fog clinging to the tense faces of my siblings. Anna, the family favorite, smiled serenely, while Carlos fidgeted with his watch, clearly reluctant to stay. I, Clara, a 39-year-old forensic accountant, sat at the table between them and opposite the family lawyer, whose formal presence heralded an event that would alter our lives forever. "The will of Helena Miller will now be read," the lawyer announced in an impersonal tone. My breath hitched, even though I knew something like this was coming. For years I'd endured disdainful glances and devaluation, but what I hadn't anticipated was the confirmation of my worst fears. As he read, each word was a dagger to my hopes. "And so, I bequeath 60% of my estate to Anna, 30% to Carlos, and, Clara, you shall receive 10% of the property." It echoed in my mind like a death sentence. What was this paltry sum but an insult to the dedication I'd always given the family? It was a meaningless token, a complete denial of who I was. I looked at Anna, whose smile was now undeniably smug, and at Carlos, whose expression was a blend of apprehension and acquiescence. I had always been the one balancing the family's finances, yet here I was, disgracefully excluded from the inheritance. A feeling of outrage and rebellion began to well up inside me. This exclusion empowered me. From a young age, I had sacrificed my own dreams, shouldering all the financial burdens, while my siblings enjoyed their lives. Anna as the golden child, and Carlos as the perpetually convalescing beneficiary of the family's resources. I recalled all the times I'd been the voice of reason in family meetings, always striving to maintain equilibrium. The liquidity of my life was crumbling before their eyes. "To me, this isn't just about money. It's about respect," I blurted out, interrupting the hushed murmurs in the room. The words hung in the air, intimate and cutting. The reading ended, and the lawyer closed the document as if it were a burden. I knew what had just happened was more than a simple reading. It was confirmation that I had always been seen as less, a shadow between the two favorites. But now, instead of feeling defeated, a new fire ignited within me. I was no longer just defending a material inheritance, but the respect I deserved. Hearing the excited whispers between my siblings, the idea of justice began to solidify in my mind. I would no longer be their shadow. This exclusion only fueled my determination to seek the truth and the dignity they had tried to deny me. The true legacy of the family would not be just the money, but the structure of justice I was about to build. They didn't know they were awakening a power within me in that crucial moment. End of Block 1. Block 2. Block 2. Contextualizing the relationship. Memories flooded back like currents in a river, pulling me into a past I'd tried to ignore. I recalled my role in the family, the eternal sacrifice in the name of their harmony and their dreams. It was like a black-and-white movie where the main characters were Anna and Carlos. I was always the secondary figure, the one whose voice was drowned out by the shrill tones of their laughter. I remember one Christmas when we were opening presents. Everyone gathered around the brightly lit tree while I, as always, checked the expense list, making sure the month's bills were in order. My nimble hands moved across the notebook, a reflection of the life I led. The laughter and whispers of my family were like promises of a life that was never mine. "Clara, are you ever going to put down those accounts and join us?" Anna asked, her sarcastic tone disguised as a joke. "We need to have some fun." But the truth was, I found satisfaction in ensuring everyone else could have fun. It was a burden I'd carried for too long. Deep down, I believed that by doing everything for them, one day they would see my worth. However, over time, I realized my quest for appreciation had become a foolish expectation. Every holiday, I repeated the same dynamic. After all, I was always the responsible one. I solved problems, quelled conflicts, and kept the peace. Another memory hit me, a tense situation at a family dinner. We were discussing the future of our father's small business. Carlos, with his air of superiority, exclaimed, "Clara, you've always been good with numbers, but that doesn't mean you understand what really matters." The silence that followed was as sharp as a knife. Sometimes I wondered if he was right. Anna's voice, now an echo of arrogance, arose in my mind. "You need to learn to value what really matters. Human relationships. Your obsession with numbers won't feed your soul." The words still resonated within me, mixing with the weight of the betrayal that had now become my fuel. They had been ingrained like a weed in my mind until that fateful moment in the lawyer's office. The reminiscences of a childhood where I always aspired to be more, to be noticed, now became an unbearable burden. What I hadn't realized was that I had settled for being the one responsible for their survival, while I myself remained invisible. Stripped of the hope for recognition, I decided to reverse this unsustainable dynamic. My strength lay in my forensic accounting background, a field I chose to understand the complex financial games that govern our lives. It was the only thing I had built for myself, and it had been completely ignored by them. I carefully analyzed this information, collecting not just data, but also an arsenal of knowledge that I could use. So, instead of suppressing my frustration, I decided to channel it into something constructive. As a forensic accountant, I had analytical skills that could give me a competitive edge. The injustices I faced throughout my life now became a source of motivation. It was time to use these skills not only to balance family budgets, but to balance the scales of justice myself. And if my siblings thought they could erase my worth, it only motivated me to seek the opposite: empowerment. I found a local women's entrepreneurial support group that fostered business development for women. I kept my name and image confidential and immersed myself in research and planning. During those initial months, I remember the anxiety I felt meeting other women who, like me, had stories to tell. Between budgeting and credit commercials, I discovered that the pain of exclusion was a shared experience. Listening to their struggles and transformative victories became a balm for my soul. I began to structure a business model based on providing financial support and guidance to women facing similar situations, but at the same time, conscious of my legacy. While I worked, the whispers of my family echoed in my mind, always believing I wasn't enough. But now, I was transforming that doubt into determination. A mentor would emerge on this journey, a former colleague who encouraged me to believe in the importance of my project and the strength of women. During long conversations, he told me that my plan could not only financially prosper, but also change lives. Reflecting on these conversations, I realized I could finally be creating something that wasn't just a company, but a legacy, the beginning of a new era of empowerment. Yes, I would be more than what they offered me. This was my journey, and the exclusion that had defined my past was the engine that would shape my future. Whatever happened, I was determined to do this for myself. And so, the new Clara was taking shape. Block 3. Initial discovery. Investigation weeks turned into months, and the anger over the betrayal I had suffered became a powerful driving force. I was determined to build something that not only belonged to me, but also offered support to other women facing similar struggles. Amidst meetings with the local support group, I formulated a revolutionary project, a crowdfunding platform for women. With this in mind, I rented a room in a local cafe, a space that reflected the welcoming atmosphere I wanted to infuse into the project. But first, crucial market research was needed to understand the real needs. Diving into studies on female entrepreneurship, I realized that only 8% of businesses were founded by women. This ignited a new spark of determination within me. I didn't just want to be part of the change, I wanted to lead it. As I organized my notes, the project began to take shape. The idea wasn't just to raise funds, but to create a space where women could share their experiences and receive financial and emotional support. I talked to other entrepreneurs during my meetings, and the solidarity I received fueled my determination. One of these women, Sophia, suggested we hold a launch event where each of us could share our stories and contribute ideas. When the big day finally arrived, the cafe buzzed with energy. Looking at the women around me, I realized that, for the first time, I wasn't alone. I began to present my vision for the platform, and the warmth of the positive reaction surprised me. By the end, the excitement in the air was palpable, and one of the participants, Rita, approached to congratulate me. Her statement that my project could truly make a difference resonated with me, boosting my confidence. However, after the presentation, new challenges emerged. The biggest was securing seed funding, territory I didn't yet fully understand. My mentor, always a source of support, encouraged me to seek partnerships with local businesses that might be interested in sponsoring the project. "Never underestimate the power of a good pitch," he always said, and I knew this moment could define the future of my project. With the help of my support group, I organized another event, this time focused on networking and fundraising. I wanted the women to feel the strength of a united network. Each of them brought their experiences, and the atmosphere was charged with hope and solidarity. The exchange of stories was invigorating, and I saw all of us growing together in a safe space. While all this was happening, I couldn't prevent the whispers of my family echoing in my mind. "You're not good enough," that voice insisted, but with each doubt I faced, the determination to prove them wrong intensified. The echoes of the past no longer held sway over me. I was forging my own path. The positive feedback from the group members further motivated me to solidify my idea. I knew I was starting something significant, something that could improve not only my life, but also the lives of many other women. This prospect of impacting lives became a driving force. So, gradually, my project took on a more solid form. The idea of a crowdfunding platform for women was becoming a reality. However, with each step, the pressure increased. The feeling that at any moment everything could go wrong was constant, but it didn't paralyze me. On the contrary, it fueled my determination. The group meetings became more frequent and intense. Each conversation, each shared idea, fueled the flame I had ignited. It would be a journey full of challenges and uncertainties, but now, looking around, I saw a strong and vibrant collective. Together, we were more than the sum of our parts. We were a transformative force. And so, the planning of my platform continued, no longer burdened by the exclusion I had previously carried. The transformation was remarkable. The invisible woman I had always been began to take shape, and with each passing day, I grew stronger. Now I was ready to take another step toward what was meant to be. I was beginning to transform the pain of the past into a future of empowerment and justice. The new Clara was emerging, and with her, a new era was about to begin. Block 4. Deepening the investigation. As the crowdfunding platform project began to take shape, my determination grew under the constant pressure of mounting expectations. The support group had become a second family, and the warmth of their interactions pushed me to go further, to delve deeper into the real needs of the women I intended to help. I needed more information, more experiences, and above all, I needed to understand the essence of who I wanted to impact. I decided to conduct a series of interviews with women from diverse backgrounds and contexts. I wanted to know what they really faced in their entrepreneurial journeys. I immersed myself in stories of courage and resilience. One of the most impactful interviews was with Juliana, a 30-year-old single mother who had ventured to open a small online clothing store. "I started with a little over $1,000, she recounted, her eyes shining with the passion she felt for her business. "But what hinders me most isn't the lack of capital, it's the loneliness. Sometimes it feels like I'm the only one fighting this battle." Listening to Juliana was like looking in a mirror. Her story echoed the pain of abandonment and struggle I had experienced. It was a whirlwind of emotions that filled the room as we talked. She revealed that many of her friends felt the same way, and that the lack of support was a constant barrier. My idea of creating a platform that offered emotional and financial support for women began to solidify, not as a mere project, but as a true sanctuary. Continuing these interviews, I took the opportunity to solicit feedback. What did they expect from a platform like mine? What would be truly helpful? The answers were varied, but one point stood out: the need for a community, a space where women could connect, exchange ideas, and support each other. It was crucial that the project wasn't just about money, but about creating a network of trust and empowerment. As I deepened my research, something began to form in my mind. A cooperative, an investment club. I discovered that many women were coming together to help each other, but without a proper structure to leverage their collective strength. I found examples of successful crowdfunding campaigns that had positively impacted the lives of women in other parts of the world. Each story was a tile in a larger mosaic that I now glimpsed. The answer was becoming increasingly clear. The project I was beginning to build needed a focus, an essence that united all these stories and experiences. And what did I want? More than money, I wanted purpose. To create a space where women not only felt safe to share their projects, but also encouraged to believe in themselves. That was the fuel that would make the platform take off. With this clarity of mind, I began working on a prototype of the proposal. What was once just an idea now became a structured business model. I started putting together a business plan that included market analysis, monetization options, and dissemination strategies. This would be necessary for securing the investment I so desperately wanted. As a forensic accountant, I knew I needed solid numbers to underpin the idealistic vision. However, even as I delved into this planning phase, the voice of doubt still whispered in the small, empty spaces of my mind. The test of my project would be presenting everything to a wider audience, and that required courage that I often felt I lacked. My mentor decided it was time to make a formal presentation to a small group of investors. He organized a meeting that would be the launchpad for my idea. On the eve of the event, I spent the night reviewing all the material, nervous and with an unsettled stomach. I scrutinized every small detail, from the layout of the presentations to the financial analyses. By the time the next day arrived, I had enveloped myself in an armor of self-confidence. I am more than what they offered me, I whispered to myself as I looked in the mirror. The space my mentor chose was welcoming and informal, conducive to constructive conversations. As the group began to arrive, I quickly realized that I was far from the only woman seeking funding for her project. However, the energy in the air was palpable, a combination of hope and expectation. Each participant brought their story, and the exchange of ideas seemed to float through the environment. Finally, it was my turn. I took a deep breath and, looking at the audience, I noticed familiar faces from my support group encouraging me with supportive glances. When I began to speak, the words flowed like a river. I presented the project, the interviews I conducted, and the needs that emerged. What I observed were not only thoughtful faces, but also smiles of identification. Block 5. Unveiling the Complete Plan. With the energy from the presentation still buzzing within me, I started planting the seeds for the future of my crowdfunding project. The feeling of finally being in control, of steering my own narrative, was invigorating. In the days that followed, I used every opportunity to talk to people about my idea. Each interaction was a chance to expand my knowledge and network, and with each conversation, my plan became clearer. As the weeks progressed, my new perspective motivated me to develop a more robust business model. I worked intensely to integrate the suggestions gathered during interviews and meetings. I needed the project to be not only financially viable, but also perfectly aligned with the mission of empowering women. Only then could it serve as the foundation for the collaborative space I wanted to create. I based my business model on subscriptions, with different tiers offering access to various resources. In addition, I planned to offer monthly workshops and events where women could not only learn about financial management and marketing, but also share their stories and ask questions. This collaborative approach would be the anchor of the platform. With the model taking shape, it was time to bring it to life. I launched a crowdfunding campaign, knowing I needed a compelling presentation to capture the public's interest. I looked at successful models I knew, and inspiration led me to prepare a video that told my story, a journey of overcoming challenges and transformation. When the day of the filming arrived, I gathered with some filmmaker friends who had worked on creative projects. The energy was high, and the idea that my voice could be heard, that I could truly inspire other women, filled me with indescribable excitement. When I finally watched the finished video, I felt as if a piece of my soul was there, exposed and vulnerable. It was my story, but also the story of many other women. After launching the campaign online, I received instant feedback. On the first day, we reached our initial goal, and within 4 days, I surpassed 50% of my funding target. I was incredulous, but at the same time extremely motivated. Women began sharing not only my video, but also their own stories of struggle and resilience, inspiring others in a growing wave. With each donation received, the idea that we were all connected grew stronger. I was thrilled to read the encouraging messages from strangers who became part of my journey. The collective value of this wasn't just in numbers. Each contribution was a testament to support and solidarity. A new community was emerging. However, with the success of the campaign also came challenges. I contacted potential investors, but not all of them were willing to embrace the idea of a platform focused on women. They raised doubts, questioning the project's viability. "Why only for women?" they asked. The doubt in their eyes was something I couldn't ignore. One investor even told me, "Clara, you need to be more inclusive if you want your project to succeed." This made me reflect. I didn't want to deviate from the initial purpose that had become so clear to me. However, I realized there was an opportunity there. While the core message of the project would be women's empowerment, I could incorporate principles of collaboration and inclusion, something that would resonate not only with women, but also with allies who wanted to join forces for a greater good. This evolutionary proposal could transform the project into a platform that served a wider audience, but with the same focus on dignity and respect for the life experiences of every woman who used it. I decided to invite the women who had previously participated in the support group and the crowdfunding campaign to a special event. During the event, I intended to discuss this new vision and open a discussion. That night, the space was filled with vibrant and dedicated voices, full of experiences and stories to share. When I declared my intentions and my inclusive perspective, it was as if the very air in the room changed. The conversation flowed organically. Several women shared their stories and experiences, some mentioning how authentic and empowering it was to see an idea being built with purpose. The inspiration spread, and to my surprise, many of the men present also expressed their support and offered themselves as allies. Some of them told us stories of how their mothers, sisters, and colleagues faced difficulties and deserved a space that respected and welcomed their voices. Block 5. Execution and Results. I concluded that this new approach wasn't just necessary, but crucial to the project's success. By embracing inclusivity, I realized that the original focus on female empowerment could be strengthened by allies who chose to fight alongside us. This support network would tighten, amplifying the community's strength. In the following months, the crowdfunding campaign not only met but exceeded its goals. It was a true testament to the collective power we had harnessed. As a result, my platform began to take shape both physically and online. Building a website that served as a safe space for women to share their stories became a priority as well. The first round of workshops was a resounding success. The positive feedback generated by the lectures, offering mentorship and an exchange of diverse experiences, strengthened the idea that we were part of a growing and significant movement. Participants left not only with practical tools, but also with the feeling that they belonged to something larger. What began as a desire to reclaim my worth and overcome exclusion expanded into a vibrant and inclusive movement. Together, we were more than a project. We were a revolution in gender relations and entrepreneurship. My goal was no longer just validation. It was a genuine drive to bring hope to those who felt invisible, just as I once did. I looked at all I had accomplished and realized that the new era had truly begun. I was on a thrilling and powerful journey, and every step was one step closer to creating a dignified and just future for all women. The pain of the past had not only shaped my trajectory, but now also illuminated the path toward a more egalitarian future. And so, I prepared myself for the new stages that lay ahead. I was ready to embrace what was yet to come. Ciao. Block 6. Execution and Consequences. With the platform finally up and running and the workshops in full swing, the atmosphere around us was charged with optimism and transformation. With each event, I saw not only women learning, but a community forming, a network growing in strength and diversity. But even so, I could never have imagined that this journey would bring not only support and growth, but also unexpected challenges. It was on a sunny morning that I was surprised by an email from an entrepreneur who had participated in one of our workshops. She was thrilled with what she had learned and had applied the marketing strategies discussed in the event. Her accessories business was thriving, and everything seemed perfect. But, at the end of the message, she raised a question. "Clara, could you help me deal with a manufacturer who is using my designs without permission?" My heart sank as I read those words. My first instinct was to offer advice and support, but I immediately realized that the problem was much bigger than a simple copyright issue. This wasn't just about a single businesswoman. It reflected a worrying pattern in the industry affecting many creative women fighting for their space. I felt a heavier weight on my shoulders, the weight of being not just a mentor, but an active advocate for all. I decided that this issue demanded a more robust response than a simple email reply. I invited the entrepreneur to talk in person, and during our meeting, I engaged her in a broader discussion about the importance of defending creative rights. She wasn't alone in this fight, and I wanted all women to know that. We talked about how crucial it was to join forces and form a cohesive front of women who would empower their voices. We agreed to hold a meeting with other participants and invite experts in intellectual property and copyright law. The idea of creating an event focused on creative rights quickly expanded, and in a short time, we set a date. The event began to generate a wave of excitement within the community. The women were excited to gather and learn about protecting their creations. I remember seeing smiling faces of women sharing their stories, and the connection that happened in that room was magical. Each woman brought a unique background, experiences that had shaped their vision and determination. When some experts began to present, the energy in the room reached a new level. The information was relevant and practical, and they began to realize that they had rights that needed to be defended. At the end of the event, there was a palpable sense of empowerment. The participants weren't just leaving with knowledge, they were leaving with the determination to act in defense of themselves and their creations. However, the growing popularity of the platform and workshops also brought unexpected challenges to light. Soon, other voices began to emerge, many of them without a true commitment to what we were building. As history always teaches, there is no shortage of those unwilling to see the success of others and create situations to benefit themselves. I was contacted by some collaborators who wanted to join the cause, but who, deep down, had different intentions. One morning, I received a proposal from a group of investors who offered considerable funding to expand the platform's operations. However, their tone made me uneasy. They were more interested in connecting with the positive image of a women's startup than in supporting the genuine mission. What really interested them was the profit potential, and that made me wary. If I accepted the proposal, I would be giving up control of the platform. From the beginning, the mission had been clear: empowerment and justice, not simply a profit-making opportunity. I talked to my mentor, who helped me weigh the pros and cons. "Consider why you started all this," he reminded me, "and don't let yourself be swayed by figures if it compromises your integrity." Amber. Block 6. A turning point. This reflection made me realize I wasn't willing to compromise my purpose for support that could easily become a tightrope walk. How could I champion other women if I wasn't in a position to defend my own project? I decided that instead of accepting this offer, I would seek collective donations and collaborations based on the voice and impact the venture had already achieved, without relinquishing control. Returning to the community, this decision became an opportunity for expansion. I communicated what was happening, and the response was inspiring. The women were ready to be allies and investors in their own journeys. We sat together to discuss how we could secure the funding we needed, and we created a new crowdfunding campaign focused on inclusion, where each small contribution would be a step towards collective empowerment. In this way, I saw the platform not only surviving, but thriving. The support was palpable, and I realized I wasn't just growing individually, but that we were all evolving. Women were entering the project not as mere supporters, but as partners. Distributing responsibilities and amplifying voices became a hallmark of our success. Thus, month after month, the support grew. At events, I saw a cycle of empowerment blossoming, women helping each other in various ways. With each new idea and contribution, the community grew stronger, and the best part was knowing that, unlike in the past, nobody was being left behind. What started as a personal struggle transformed into a significant movement, and the new Clara was a leader of a collaborative revolution. The echo of women's voices, full of strength and purpose, filled every space we created. The pain of the past, which once defined me, was now the solid foundation upon which the new era was built. The future had begun to open up, full of promises and new possibilities. I was finally ready to face it all. End of Block 6. Block 7. A New Reality. Looking at what I had built, I realized how far I had truly come. What once began as a personal struggle for recognition and justice had transformed into a vibrant movement. The community we created wasn't just a space of support, but a true celebration of collective strength. The website became a haven, filled with stories of women who, like me, had felt invisible. Each workshop, each event, brought new voices and experiences. The cycle of empowerment strengthened, and amidst laughter and collaborations, transformation was in full swing. Once, at a meeting, a young entrepreneur, Lucia, recounted how the platform had helped her fund her first sustainable fashion business. "Without you, I never would have made it," she said, her eyes shining. That statement touched us all, reaffirming our mission to create a safe space where women could grow and thrive. However, expansion also brought new challenges. With the increase in participants, the need to ensure the project's sustainability became urgent. The question was, how to keep the community alive and active. I organized a meeting with leaders of groups formed on the platform to discuss the future. We decided we needed a more structured plan to ensure the community thrived. Several ideas emerged, from implementing a subscription model to holding regular fundraising events. We listened to everyone, a reflection of our new collaborative ethos. And an exciting proposal emerged, launching a series of business fairs where entrepreneurs could connect with investors and mentors. The idea was that with each new fair, we would also have workshops and talks on relevant topics. This dual approach would provide a space for education and networking. As we organized the first events, the anticipation was palpable. On the day of the inaugural fair, the room buzzed with energy. Women from all over the city came to share their projects and experiences. As I walked through the room, I saw each face illuminated by the possibility of new connections. The workshops proved to be a resounding success. Each speaker brought something unique, and the participants engaged in fruitful discussions. With each new interaction, I realized we were solidifying the culture of support we always sought. However, not everyone was ready to celebrate our success. Some potential investors started reaching out, interested, but their intentions weren't always clear. A group of investors presented me with a considerable proposal, but their concerns about the exclusively female focus made me uneasy. I struggled internally to weigh the advantages of an investment against the risks of compromising our fundamental principles. I confronted one of the investors in a meeting. If we've decided to prioritize inclusion, I can't abandon the platform's initial vision, I explained, feeling the weight of expectations. The conversation generated palpable tension, but it also made me realize that the true strength lay in my determination to preserve our mission. In the end, I decided not to accept the proposal. My focus was on the community and on continuing to build a legacy of empowerment. I returned to the community and shared what was happening. The response was welcoming. Women were ready to become allies, investing their experiences and resources in our initiatives. With that, we established a new crowdfunding campaign, grounded in the idea that every small contribution mattered. A group of investors presented me with a considerable proposal, but their concerns about the exclusively female focus made me uneasy. I struggled internally to weigh the advantages of an investment against the risks of compromising our fundamental principles. I confronted one of the investors in a meeting. If we've decided to prioritize inclusion, I can't abandon the platform's initial vision, I explained, feeling the weight of expectations. The conversation generated palpable tension, but it also made me realize that the true strength lay in my determination to preserve our mission. In the end, I decided not to accept the proposal. My focus was on the community and on continuing to build a legacy of empowerment. I returned to the community and shared what was happening. The response was welcoming. Women were ready to become allies, investing their experiences and resources in our initiatives. With that, we established a new crowdfunding campaign, grounded in the idea that every small contribution mattered.